here today with Seane Corn. We're at the Yoga Journal Game Changers Conference in Estes Park, Colorado, at the YMCA in the Rockies here. And I want to, if you don't know who Seane Corn is, Seane is the most sought after yoga teacher in the United States. But more than that, Seane actually decided to take what she has gained. She told me one time that she just knows she was in the right place at the right time. And she's taken that platform and has really turned it just not to be a popular yoga teacher, but is really trying to make change in the world. And using her platform to help people like me, Mind Body Solutions, and other organizations step into the forefront of change. I'm also lucky enough to call her my friend. So. All right, so I want to ask you two questions, Seane.
Wait a second, you can't just bypass that. Thank you.
I'm also just really emotional. I'm really tired. I slept like nothing. Is that too much? I take it out of there?
No, don't take that out of there.
Just keep going.
Right. I want to say what a pleasure it is to be able to be here with Matt. And yes, we have been friends for a really long time, allies and compadres. And I'm really glad that you're here. And you and all the game changers deserve to be here and deserve this kind of a platform. And my hope is that your message gets out into the mainstream in a broader way, and that your work becomes accessible for more and more people, regardless of their abilities, because your message, I think, transcends the physical body. And I think it's important that all people hear that message and have an understanding of what you do and the impact that it can have, not only on their health and wellness on a physical level, but their emotional life as well.
And for me, Seane is that she's in the world doing her work and committed like she is. It keeps me company, right? Just that she's out there doing the work. So my questions are kind of simple. Seane, at some point in your life, multiple times you woke up and decided you cared about the world, that you really wanted to do something about it. And I want to and over in my life, there was things when I was young, or a little incident that all of a sudden you decided to do something rather than not. Something little that turned into what you decided to be.
I'd have to say there's probably dozens of incidences like that, because I've always had a huge issue around injustice, especially if people were being bullied when I was a kid. Now, I was really fortunate in that I had an older brother, and I had, we were very outgoing and popular in our town, and I never had to deal with bullying and things like that. And yet, if I saw it, it would feel so physically personal to me, and I couldn't stand to turn my back to it. I always felt like I had an obligation, and in many ways, perhaps because I wasn't bullied, because I had privileges based on an older, tough brother, and just fitting in. And I was always very confrontive with when I would see bullying. But I think a moment that I knew that not only was I compelled to, but I actually had some skills, was probably very early on in high school. I came from, kind of more of a blue-collar town, and people settled things through fighting, especially girls. It was
girls too. Oh, wow,
always.
dang.
And I remember there was a girl from another town, and
this is New Jersey.
This is New Jersey.
I got interrupted. It's
yeah,
New Jersey.
This is New Jersey.
Call it Jersey Corn. That's actually one of them.
Yes. And in northern New Jersey, and there was rumor had it, there was a girl from a neighboring town, I think it was Lodi, that was coming over to beat up one of my friends, because supposedly one of my friends had made out with her boyfriend over the weekend, but she hadn't known it was her boyfriend. It was just one of those dramas. And my friend was terrified, but you don't back down from a fight. Once it's been kind of claimed that this is what's going to happen and it's going to get ugly. And everyone was kind of excited for the fight. My friend was nervous, but she was, committed. And I remember when the girl got there, and for whatever reason, I went right up to her and I said, I want to talk to you. And I went to my friend and I want to talk to you. And we went down into the girls' locker room. And I said, clearly I get this is going to happen. I understand this is going to happen. But before this happens, I want to ask a couple questions. And basically mediated a conversation between the two of them. And they both were crying. One girl felt really, they're humiliated and bad, and her boyfriend was constantly cheating on her. And if she didn't take a stand, what would that look like? And this friend was so happy to be validated by this guy that she didn't know, and she was in this town. It was a whole drama story. We were all crying. We end up hugging it out. The fight never happens. She leaves through the back door. And I remember thinking, even after that was over, I think I have a skill for this. That I think not only did I need to do that, I felt compelled to mediate this conversation, but having a conversation between the two and getting real about it and finding out like where it was really coming from and having a resolve at the end that was really peaceful, it felt right. It just felt like the right thing. And I think that moment and many like that just sat in my soul as a part of who I am, an organic skill that I had, and it influenced to this day my need to mediate, to get involved, but to try to do it in a way that sees the underlying core issues and hopefully finds some peace and resolution. That's what goes down in Jersey.
That's why I hang with the corn. So my other question is in relationship to social justice and activism and being a yoga teacher, obviously, but more with trying to change the world, what role has the body played? It's a huge question,
Yeah.
but in not only your realization, but how you go about what you do.
It's a huge question, and I'll try to be as condensed as I can about it, but it's kind of difficult. And what we've been taught, there's no separation between the mind and the body, and that everything that you think, feel, experience has an influence on your cellular tissue. And if you're not deliberately processing the experience of your life, especially trauma, and often we think of trauma as shock trauma, big traumas, but there's situational traumas, there's developmental traumas. Everyone experiences trauma, but some of us are taught to suppress it, shut it down, deny it, reject it. But once it's impacted your central nervous system, it's going to be cumulative. It's going to impact who you are and the way in which you relate to stressors. And so what we're taught is that if you haven't been given the space, especially as a child, to process, discharge, feel, connect, rinse, rage, it's 1,000 words for it, that energy stays suppressed in your body and it becomes the tension that we experience. But the tension becomes addictive in a way, because if there's a trauma that happens, my body will automatically lock down around it, fight, flight, freeze, but it puts me in a state of control. It becomes a part of my survival. So the next time something happens that feels unsafe, not in the literal, not in the cognitive, but on a sensation level, my body will automatically lock down to protect me. It's like, okay, I'm on to you. I'm not going to allow that vulnerability to happen again. So I get shut down again and again and again and again. And as we all know, tension, stress, anxiety is the number one cause of illness, of disease, depression. So in activism, of course, you're dealing in environments where there is trauma. And you're often dealing with populations that don't necessarily have the tools to be able to process. So inevitably, when you don't have these tools, you're going to use drugs, alcohol, maybe domestic violence, to discharge or to numb the energy. If you're not dealing with your own stuff, when you go into those environments, you'll try to fix or change something that makes you uncomfortable, or your own trauma will get triggered, or you'll re-traumatize someone else because of the things that you don't understand. So the work of the activist is to recognize that sometimes, in my experience, because I hadn't been taught as a young child to process my rage, I have huge rage, going out into the fields and being an activist, I got to fight and yell and scream and confront. And in some ways that would discharge temporarily the energy until the next morning. And then I start to feel anxious and uncomfortable in my body again. And I would look for a fight because that was the only way I felt better, until I understood that there had to be more mindful practices to allow me to move the energy, not just move it, but understand how it got there in the first place, learn how to be in relationship with it. So when it does get triggered, it's like, oh, there you are. How do you breathe, ground it, stabilize it, so that I'm not reacting from it? So if someone who's out there as an activist isn't dealing with their own mind-body connection, it's not sustainable. They will burn out. It's inevitable. We see it all the time. I've burned out 1,000 times until for me, my tools are yoga, meditation, prayer, sleep, diet, and therapy. Those are my 6 non-negotiables to help me to process the biological tension and the emotional resonance that exists, or actually has created that tension.
That's why she's the corn.
The corn. Yay.
Thanks so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. I love you.